you. It's just a little different color. Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is someone not muted?
Yeah, hang on.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? All right, Steve, you got your work cut out for you tonight on roll call.
Okay, I'll speak fast. No, just kidding. All right. I'll start off with the council. Alderperson Saloga is excused tonight. Barron? Here. Valdy?
Here.
Dean?
Here.
Grimmer?
Here.
Casson? And Iker?
Here.
And Mayor Atwell?
Present.
And for the record, well, I'll get to the Plan Commission next. Commissioner Greenway? Here. Jashinsky?
Here.
Merrick?
Here.
Breyer?
Here.
Schultz?
Here.
And Weiler?
Here.
And then for the record, Administrator Hafner and Planner Barrows are also here.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, the next item is citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments? Please step up to the podium, Mary, and we'll have you go first.
Thank you, everyone. They had me test this mic out for height, and it's great, so thank you. So this evening, I'd like to talk about item 5, which is the discussion by the Common Council and Plan Commission members regarding a mini strategic planning process specific to the economic development and possible tweaks to the land use. And then down to 6, the Common Council agenda, consideration of expanding the scope of the previously approved downtown planning project of the capital budget and utilize the funds for a mini strategic planning effort specific to economic development throughout the city. Reviewing the capital project approved to be spent for the downtown development plan from 2020, $12,000 is the amount designated. Breakdown of what SEH has provided is, task 1 is $12,500, cost of community services study. Task 2, $13,000 for facilitation and management of land use planning effort. Optional tasks 3, $1,500 for public engagement. Optional task 4, $1,500 for website creation and management. That brings the total to $28,500. Where will the extra dollars over the $12,000 approved from this come from? Public Works Commission started work on the comprehensive pedestrian and bicycle accommodation plan at their meeting March 3. This plan includes land use. They hope to have this completed by August of 2021. Both of these capital projects are reviewing land use, and they both affect economic development. At first glance, it appears there's no coordination for these two capital budget projects. Goals of the downtown development planning project and the comprehensive pedestrian and bicycle accommodation path are very connected. What was the focus of the original downtown development planning project, which had the number of 2020-20, that was approved for the 2020 5-year capital program? I want to thank everyone for the time that you are giving to our city of Delafield. It's really a good place to be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to make citizens' comments? Lynn, come on up.
Hi, Linda Holton, 45 Lillian Court, Delafield. I just, I just want to say that I fully support you, both bodies, having this information in order to make informed decisions. I'm not sure, now that Mary brought up all the expenses, but I'm not sure how you're going to manage that, but I believe it would be a tool in your box. But what I want to address tonight is not really concerns, because I trust both bodies to do what's right for Delafield and the people of Delafield. But when you start talking zoning, changing the master plan, or tweaking the master plan, that makes the hair on the back of the neck of a lot of people just stand up. So if you could, in your discussion tonight, address, concerns is too strong a word, but what is driving this analysis? Why now? And could you let the people know, and I realize it's early in the process and this will come out later, but will it be binding? Is it a tool and not a weapon? I mean, are you going to be opening Pandora's box and have developers come in and say, well, it's the best use of the land for the city because it's monetarily effective? My concern would be that monetary analysis of a development is equal to and doesn't trump quality of life issues, aesthetics, the impact on neighborhoods and neighbors and their investments in their neighborhoods, because this sounds like if you base zoning on monetary analysis, then you can change any zoning and plop down whatever you want in the middle of a district. And I'm not saying you're going to do that. I'm saying you need to address those concerns so people calm down. The other, no, that's it. I just got home from vacation. And that was 5 minutes of scribbling. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else like to make citizens' comments? Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Susie. We're behind the pole.
I'm not as tall as Mary. Susie Thompson, 700 Milwaukee Street. It's really exciting that we have the two committees together tonight for a joint meeting. I think it shows cooperation and growth for the city of Delafield. If you look historically at what our master plan is now versus what it was 25 years ago, 35 years ago, 50 years ago, what was Delafield in 1850 when we started building? Everything changes with time. It changes based on the population. It changes based on the people that live here and want to continue to live here, and possibly in a different way than what they did 20 years ago or 30 years ago, possibly when they first moved here. Many people came when they were younger, when they first got married, and said, I want to live in Delafield, I want to live on Nagawicca. They said, we want to live downtown, we want to have a quaint little house. Some people then bought bigger houses as their family grew. Some people added on to their homes to stay where they were. Everybody has a different idea and plan for what they are doing now and what they want to do in the future. We should keep in mind what we have now, what we want in the future as a city. I think it would be nice to hear and see more people coming to the meeting as well as attending online and having more input about what they want and where they want to see us grow. But saying we want to stay the same now as we were 10 years ago or 20 years ago is totally unacceptable. The DNR, if I'm correct, and I haven't heard anybody say it lately other than my mom, Bobby Chentis Krieger, was pointing out to me yesterday that the DNR used to own the land with the ponds by the fish hatchery. The fish hatchery did not belong to the city always. That belonged to the DNR. The city did acquire that land and did wonderful things with the fish hatchery and the land where the ponds used to be. Some of those ponds are no longer there. I didn't hear anybody tonight complaining about that we have ball diamonds and soccer fields and we have extra parking for downtown. So wait a minute, in '98 there were a lot of changes. Who's complaining about it today? No one. We do appreciate having the extra parking. We do appreciate having the fish hatchery for a building that can be used for the community. So let's remember when we complain about growth or change, and I've been one complaining about some things that we've been talking about adding, about how we do it, such as the pier. And I'm kind of getting swayed that maybe it could be good if we made it smaller and not so huge. So I am open to that. But let's keep in mind growth for our future and growth in developing some of our land. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. Anyone else? We've got a few more out there. Any other citizens like to comment? Seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, discussion by the Common Council and Planning Commission regarding a mini strategic planning process specific to economic development and possible tweaks to the land use plan. Discussion will include a SWOT analysis and visual preference survey. I'd like to thank Amy and Tom in particular for working over the last few months to put this together. The onus and the reason why we're here looking at this is because we had to pass a city referendum to be able to afford our current operating expenses and raise the city of Delafield taxpayers' property taxes in doing so, to maintain a police officer, a city clerk, and a public works employee. And that has a 5-year window on it. At the end of the 5 years, which is less than 5 years now, we need to be able to have enough new development in the city so that we don't have to come back and ask for that money again. So we need to grow faster in a smart, strategic way to make sure we don't have to go to those, back to the citizens to ask them for additional funding. And this process is designed to set up the discussion, have it very public, have lots of citizens' input, and get outside information as to if we decide to make any tweaks to accomplish this goal, what is the most logical, smart way for the best bang for our buck to accomplish that. And I appreciate everybody coming here tonight, and I will turn it over to Tom and Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this on? All right, so I too want to thank everybody for being here tonight. As we're talking about a mini strategic plan for economic development, it's a really important initiative for us to consider. The mayor didn't steal too much of my thunder, but he's right that the main impetus for this coming together is really our budgetary issues and our structural budget deficit. But there's other reasons that we'll get into as well as far as why it's important for the city to consider economic development and potential tweaks that would stimulate some growth. But we're just, as far as staff, Amy and I, we're just real excited to kick this effort off this evening, and we really appreciate you being here. As far as the agenda, it is a bit of a long agenda. We're anticipating a bit over 3 hours tonight. We're going to kick it off with, I'll give a brief overview of the city's financial considerations. From there, Amy Barrows, our city planner, will get into the planning and land use considerations. Dan Bowditch is with us on Zoom this evening. He's a senior economic development professional with SEH, and he's going to be going over cost of community services studies so that we understand different types of development that come to Delafield, how that affects our expenses, and what types of developments have larger bangs for the buck than others. And then we'll open it up to opportunity for the Common Council and Plan Commission members to have some discussion and ask some questions and answers following our presentations. Given the long agenda, we would appreciate everybody being as brief as possible with that. We've got a lot of people here, and we're trying to be out of here hopefully shortly after 10 o'clock this evening. And then we'll get to the action item. One citizen's comment this evening questioned the budget available. We can get into that, but I'd like to hit on it real quick right now. The Common Council made 2 appropriations towards the downtown development plan. In the 2020 budget, there was a $12,000 appropriation, and then in the 2021 budget, there was a $14,000 appropriation added to that. So there is $26,000 available for this effort in the capital budget. That falls slightly short of the estimated cost put together by SEH. We do have a couple $1,000s available in miscellaneous planning in our operating budget that we can utilize to fund this project if the council chooses to do so. So after we consider action, we will take a brief 5-minute break. And then regardless of what the council decides to do, we think it's important and a good expenditure of our time together to either way get into a Swot analysis. We're planning on about an hour and 15 minutes for that. Another quick break, and then we'll get into a visual preference survey that SEH has put together. Another one of the citizens' comments asked, what's the purpose and why now? So I've got several slides that speak to that. As the mayor mentioned, the primary purpose would be to address our structural budget deficit. In 2006, Wisconsin introduced state levy limits. They became among the most stringent levy limits in the country in 2012. But regardless of that, from 2012 through 2016, the city had a very healthy budget. In fact, by 2016, we had a fund balance of nearly 35% of annual expenditures. But then came the pivotal 2017 budget. Remember back in 2012 when the levy limits became more stringent, unfortunately the city had some bad timing where we eliminated a police officer position at the exact same time that created the base for our budget going forward. Fast forward to 2017, not only did we want to reintroduce that police officer position, but we added a second one also. And in addition to that, there was a significant change in hotel room tax law that decreased the amount of hotel room taxes that the city can keep for general fund purposes. Between those two things, it significantly impacted our budget. And as I said, we had that 35% fund balance available. For the next few years, we used that fund balance to make up the deficit in our budget. That worked for us through 2020. But after that, we actually decreased our fund balance goal from 25% to 20%. And we felt we couldn't go any lower than that just because of our bond rating and whatnot. So that's why we went forward with the referendum in November of 2020. That was for about $257,000 ongoing for 5 years. And that was approved by 58% of the voters. Other reasons why we want to look at economic development and doing some consideration of a strategic plan is a recent change in attitudes regarding economic development. When I joined the city, I've been here about 2 decades ago, it was very clear what the majority of the city's position was. They valued open space and they preferred no growth. And our zoning code and our land use plan is a good tool to accomplish that. We've got a lot of zoning that is such that it doesn't allow development to happen with regards to the densities available and the costs involved with development. More recently, we've been having more people. I would say it's gotten to be probably about a 50-50 mix from the people that I talk to, from input I received from the council and the mayor regarding the importance of economic development. We've had more citizens and citizens groups come forward in support of economic development. Most specifically, there's the Citizens for Responsible Growth that are asking the city to be more open to stimulating economic growth. In light of what COVID did to our economy last year, it's also more important than ever to consider how the local economy is interconnected with regards to businesses, jobs, housing, customer base. They all feed off of one another. Business creates jobs, jobs require housing, and housing and jobs lead to customer base for businesses. It's also important, as was discussed during citizens' comment, to not lose focus of what makes Delafield special with regards to our environment, our history, open space, and recreational opportunities. Delafield is a great place to work, live, and play. It's interesting, the mayor and I, we had a meeting last week with a business owner who recently relocated here from Colorado. He's an outdoor enthusiast, and he mentioned that when he wanted to come back to Wisconsin, he's an MIT graduate. So what does an MIT graduate do? He created an extensive spreadsheet. He said he analyzed data down to things like water quality of lakes. And he looked at all the municipalities in southeastern Wisconsin, and Delafield came up on top. And so he chose Delafield. He's got a really creative business, and they're looking at doing extensive growth, and they'd like to do that in Delafield. So there really has been I've seen a change in attitudes from elected officials, from citizens, from business owners over the last 20 years that has really marked a change from a significant majority of people being opposed to development to more what I would call about a 50-50 mix current day. The state of Wisconsin requires municipalities to redo their land use plan every 10 years. The reason they do that is to make sure that land use plans reflect market conditions. Our plan commission did that about 2 years ago. The conclusion they came to at that time was to hold off on making any changes until we can get census data. That census data is delayed, and it's looking right now like we're not going to be having basic census data until late this year, and probably more detailed census data is probably about a year away. As the mayor mentioned, we've got a 5-year horizon where we have an opportunity to allow economic development to be a part of the solution with regards to our budget deficit. And so it makes sense that we need to consider acting now as opposed to waiting another year until we have the census data, and then another several months to half a year while the Plan Commission considers a change to the land use plan. With regards to potential changes, we'd be looking at the zoning code, potential tweaks with the zoning code, specifically permitted uses. Are there uses that the market calls for that aren't accommodated in our land use plan? And then with regards to housing, taking a look at density and seeing if there are tweaks that make sense. Are there large tracts of land that are currently zoned 2-acre residential where it might make sense to go a little bit more dense on the fringes, maybe along state highways and things like that. Also taking a look at single family versus multifamily. This has been a point of contention in the city for a while now. There's often a statistic referred to as far as some kind of a quota with regards to multifamily. Neither Amy or I can cite where that comes from, but it's important to establish what do we want with regards to mix, with regards to single family versus multifamily, and is multifamily an opportunity for us to provide some level of affordable housing to millennials that want to locate in Delafield. It's also important to take a look at more recent trends, senior living, CBRFs, things like that are more in demand by developers these days. And looking at the issue of, do we have enough senior living in the city that allows our longtime residents to continue living in the city if they choose to do that. And then again, we talk about the 5-year referendum approval. Now is the time to solve our problem. If we wait a year or two, that puts us substantially behind the 8 ball with regards to coming to a viable solution by the end of the 5-year horizon where the referendum sunsets. Growth is one significant tool of resolving that problem. But the realization of growth takes time. New development oftentimes takes several years to come to fruition. There's long times involved with planning, design, approval processes, construction. Typically, larger developments are phased, so they come in, they're constructed over many years. And then also there's a delay between new construction being included in assessed value. So what are all our opportunities to reduce the budget deficit? We can reduce service levels. That's something the city's talked about in the past. We've looked at opportunities to decrease garbage costs by only providing curbside pickup rather than up the drive pickup. Citizens spoke loudly that they didn't want to do that. That was an opportunity to save $160,000 a year at the time. And then more recently, the referendum is evidence that the city citizens do not want to see reduction in service levels. Separate from service level reductions, we can look at reduction in spending. We do that regularly. We're constantly looking at efficiencies and where we can save money. We've been doing that for decades now, and we will continue to do so. We can look at alternative revenue or funding. This year we looked at the wheel tax. The council chose not to go that direction. There's also other alternatives, such as a transportation utility, where municipalities can charge a separate fee for the use of the transportation system. Typically that fee is based on a usage basis. So businesses that have large fleets or attract a lot of customers, they would pay a higher percentage of that fee. There are limited amounts of things we can do with the transportation utility. For example, we currently pay for paving out of our capital budget. So paving is not a problem for us because levy limits focus exclusively on the operating budget, not the capital budget. So for this to be a viable solution for us, we need to fund items that are currently in the operating budget. The state legislature has excluded snow plowing and street sweeping from that, so that if we were to cover such costs, we'd have to reduce our levy limit by those amounts. But there are some other limited activities we could fund in this, and it would allow us to preserve levy limit for other things. Those types of things would be pothole repairs, crack sealing, drainage improvements, and things like that. There's also such a thing as a streetlight utility, where municipalities could consider a user fee for those people that have streetlights in their area. And that would be a user fee for the electricity that's involved in those, and then also any kind of maintenance or construction costs associated with that. And then the last opportunity is growth, and that's going to be the focus of our discussion this evening. This next slide graphs net new construction, which is the primary basis on how our levy limit grows. As you can see, in 5 of the last 11 years, our net new construction has been less than 1%. And in the last 12 years in a row, consecutive, it's been less than 1.7%. From 2016 to 2019, we had a fairly significant downward trend. That reversed itself in 2020 a bit, and hopefully we can see that continue. But the main point to get from this graph is when our net new construction is less than inflation, which is represented on this graph by the consumer price index, that results in a budget situation that's not sustainable. That means our expenses tend to be rising faster than our ability to levy for them. So as far as our goals going into this process, it's important to first understand where we're at now in the do-nothing alternative. If we just continue with economic growth as we've seen over the last few years. Under the do-nothing alternative, we can realistically expect growth to continue with net new construction at about 1% per year. That 1% per year results in about $14 million of growth per year. Over this next 5-year time frame, if we get that baseline growth for the next 5 years, that would be about $72 million worth of growth. But it's important to understand that baseline growth alone continues to increase our budget deficit, and the reason being inflation is greater than baseline growth. As far as a preliminary estimate of what we need to achieve, if we're going to solve the budget situation through growth alone, we would need to be looking at about $75 million of net new construction above and beyond that baseline growth that we talked about. So you might have read recently the mayor referred to, we got the Hendricks development at 705 Genesee Street. That's estimated to be about a $25 million project. And he mentioned that we need 2 more of those. So when he says we need 2 more of those, we need 2 more of those projects above and beyond what we've experienced in the past with regards to baseline growth. More and more, some developers are inquiring about TIF, and it's important to understand that if we do move forward with any development with TIF, that significantly impacts how that development improves our budget situation. Most TIFs are paid back in 10 to 25 years, and for that payback period, it provides us with no benefit with regards to our budget situation. We receive no additional tax base from that. And even after a TIF project is retired, state law is such that the city only realizes 50% of the increment created from that TIF. So TIF is a tool that we need to strongly consider. There's some creative solutions that we can look into. If we have a project where TIF might make sense, it might be possible to only put half the project into the TIF boundary. That way, half the project would generate tax base expansion for us right away, and at least we're accomplishing something towards our budget deficit. So when we look at that kind of goal, what that means is a preliminary target for growth instead of the 1% we've been at for several years. We need to be more around the 2% rate, not only for the next 5 years, but also ongoing beyond that for budget sustainability. And therefore, when you kind of equate the baseline and the additional growth we need and what that means as far as a 2% growth, average annual growth over the next 5 years needs to be approximately $29.4 million per year. It seems like a large project, but we've got a lot of good projects that are possibilities. As we mentioned, the Hendricks project is already approved. We've got the Hawthorne Farms project, which is well on its way, and that project alone, and with regards to just phase 1, is estimated to be about $20 to $22 million. And then big picture, we've got the possibility of a medical campus at CN94, and that alone, we're talking about somewhere in the area of $70 million. So although it seems like a big chunk of money, I think we do, it's a reasonable goal, and I think it's something that we definitely can shoot for. As we get into the project, we'll refine that goal even further. As I said before, that cost to service new growth, it's important to understand that. And to understand, if we're looking at residential growth or commercial growth, how that differs. A project like the Hendricks at 705 Genesee Street, that's likely to result in very little new expenditures for the city. There's no new infrastructure installed for that. The roads are there and whatnot. As far as refining the goal, it's also important to take a look at our future staffing assumptions. Right now, the case can be made that we are shorthanded in the Public Works Department, and that cost of community services will look at issues such as, what are the cutoffs when we need a new police officer, and at what point do we need a new Public Works employee, and then those can be implemented into a model as far as further refining our growth goal that we need to solve the budget problem. As far as the components of the project that we're proposing, they include a cost of community services study that Dan Bowditch will talk about shortly, an existing land use inventory that compares our land use plan to the land uses that are in place and identifies where there's inconsistencies. We will obtain and summarize existing market information. We'll kick off the SWOT and Visual Preference Survey this evening. We're also looking at doing, you see later in the bullet points, a focus group, and we'll also conduct the SWOT and Visual Preference Survey with them as well. We are proposing a dedicated project website for this, along with some public engagement. And right now, we're envisioning that public engagement would be through a survey process that we would host on that dedicated website. I mentioned the mayor-appointed focus group that would help us work through these issues. And then finally, we'd have a clear and concise deliverable summary document with specific direction for going forward. The overarching project goal would be to stimulate smart local economic growth as a significant component to addressing the budget deficit. That would be done through most prominently zoning code amendments and focused tweaks to the land use plan. And then we'd come out of it with a specific mission statement and core values defined specific to local economic development in the city of Delafield. That covers my presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy now. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll try to be real brief because Tom did steal my thunder, but so real quickly, Tom just spoke about why we're here and our goals for the project in good detail, and the bottom line is mostly related to the budget. However, we're going to focus on solving that problem through growth, through economic development. And before getting into our project details and moving into the exercise pieces, which, by the way, Darren Fortney, I don't think he was introduced, is a partner of mine at SCH, a senior planner who will help with the exercise component of the project, the SWOT analysis and the visual preference survey. But I just want to spend a little bit of time backing up and talking about the current tools that the city has right now to help guide decision-making for land uses, what we use at City Hall when we're talking to applicants, and then how we can propose to move forward in order to reassess that guidance to be more proactive in nature. So, as a new planner within the last year, there are several folks that come in and it's hard to give them guidance on new and different opportunities because the ordinance and plan are relatively restrictive in nature. So let's see here. So I think it's really important to talk about the city being sustainable long-term. This economic development group that we've been talking to has been focusing a lot on economic sustainability and having a good, strong economic ecosystem. And in order to be sustainable long-term and attract residents, businesses, and visitors to the community, it's really important to consider not only economic development, but like Linda had mentioned in her conversation, the natural environment. It's by no means our goal to develop every inch of the city. It's very important to balance that development with the natural environment, which is something that we will certainly strongly consider. And then also the social piece, having those, recreational and entertainment opportunities available to folks. And then it's also important as part of this exercise that we consider that right balance between residences, businesses, industrial uses, and public type buildings. And Dan Bowditch, who will be speaking in a little bit, will talk about the cost of services related to the different forms of development and how it is so important to have that right mix, how you can offset the cost of one type of development with a cheaper, different type of development. So goals, I think there's a lot of different goals here, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to land use, we're trying to increase the tax base, strengthen the economy, but also provide the quality of life and maintain the quaint character, which is already built into your long-term land use plans. And in order to do that, we do need to eliminate the structural budget deficit that the city has. And we need to provide new opportunities for residences, employments, consumption for residents so they don't have to go outside of the city to purchase things, and enjoyment. And then that would retain and attract, again, your residents, businesses, and visitors. So with the tools you currently have, you do have a 2030 comprehensive land use plan that was adopted in 2009. Per state statutes, that is supposed to be adopted every 10 years, and Tom talked about it a little bit. The city did talk about and confirmed the existing plan last year, and that was really based on the need to get new updated census data, which will be available later this year. So hopefully the project that we're proposing is just an effort to make recommendations, which will then perhaps lead to amendments to that plan. Same with the zoning code. The recommendations may lead to need to amend the zoning code, which you did recently for Hendricks in order to accommodate some more downtown type environments. There is a downtown plan on record. It is from 1993, so it's pretty dated at this point. There is an agreement between the city of Delafield, the village of Heartland, and the town of Delafield, which regulates the type of activities that we can allow along Highway 83. So that's a plan that I actually just learned about and need to understand better, but the focus group will need to understand those types of agreements and regulations that are in place between municipalities. And then you have help from the Chamber of Commerce and Promotion and Tourism Commission, and those groups help promote activities in the business area and bring people to the city, which is a great benefit. So some additional possibilities that we've been talking about at a staff level is having the city do a citywide strategic plan. That's a bigger effort, and right now we'd like to focus on the land use issues, but it is an effort that I know Tom is interested in and maybe coming back to you in the next couple of years. It helps keep you all, gives you good guidance on where you should go and what you should prioritize your efforts and money on. And then what we would like to do is, again, instead of doing that large-scale strategic planning effort, just really focus on economic development in general. And instead of using those funds for downtown, we want to look at the city as a whole, because folks are proposing all kinds of activity all over the place. So we do want to make sure that we're trying to be proactive when we talk to them. A market analysis is an option. We have found in working with Waukesha County and SewerPAC, the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, the Waukesha County Center for Growth, which you just allocated funds toward, and then Tom and I met with Carroll University last week. that there's a ton of market information out there, and so we would like to just compile that and use it in our favor as we move forward on this project, rather than you spending all of those funds on that particular project, which is where it was heading. And then as part of our proposal, Dan's going to talk about a cost of services analysis so that you understand the costs associated with the development that you would potentially, or the focus group would potentially recommend. And then I have on here neighborhood planning. I don't think our goal is to do neighborhood planning in the traditional sense, which is an element, can be an element of a land use plan, but we are going to look at the city as a whole and identify the areas that are ripe for redevelopment or new development, and see what options might be best suited for the city. So kind of a miniature neighborhood planning effort, I guess. And then I'm not going to go through the next 2 slides, but I think you have the slides with you. So take them home, because what I did is I just went through the land use chapter of your long-range land use plan and identified some of the main recommendations that were provided. And what I did find is that first of all, there's a lot of valuable recommendations that are still valid from the 2009 plan. That I think we should definitely consider and use as we move forward if we do develop that focus group. And I'm just going to really briefly summarize the recommendations. They state to promote the protection of the city's natural resources, evaluate fiscal impacts, attract businesses that benefit the city's needs, provide a mix of housing types, redevelop waterfront properties, identify redevelopment sites throughout the city, provide higher density near downtown, and ensure compatibility with existing neighborhoods. So those are all probably still quite valid, but something that we should touch on, and we will as part of the SWOT analysis later tonight. So again, this is another slide that's just filled with recommendations, which you can read later. And then this is a slide that came from Waukesha County, which just shows population growth in Waukesha County compared to the state of Wisconsin. And Waukesha County is red, and you can see that there has been an uptick in population. It's leveled a little bit from 2016, 2017, but I would gauge that there's probably been additional increase, which the interesting part is if you go back to Tom's slide regarding new housing in Delafield, you're not seeing the same trend. So Delafield is not growing at the same rate as other communities in the county. And then I guess going back to that, one thing I just wanted to mention is there are a lot of articles that are coming out related to COVID and how people are desiring to live and work in suburban environments. So I think you will continue to see a trend of people interested in moving out to this area. But again, not creating that urbanized environment where they end up in the place that they tried to leave. And then this next slide, I do want to bring up because it is a sewer pack recommendation, and I think it's important to note that they are a regional planning commission, and they just redid their long-range plan, which visions out to 2050, and they had many public engagement opportunities as part of this. And they do recommend that municipalities have at least one zoning district provided in their municipality where areas are served by sewer or other urban services that incorporate single-family, two-family with 10,000 square foot lots or smaller. That multifamily units have 10 units per acre or more. And so I think what's important there is it's not a cap, it's actually encouraging density. And that highly urbanized environments have 18 units per acre or more. So that is a recommendation. And again, they're not recommending that in all areas that are served by sewer. They're recommending that municipalities consider zones for that higher density, with the purpose of promoting more diverse housing options and a greater range in home values, again, in order to accommodate the senior population and younger professionals. And then on that topic, if you look at the age demographics for the city of Delafield, and this is a 2019 estimate, a majority of the population is within that workforce range. And then if you just do a little bit of a deeper dive, the largest amount of population is part of the baby boomer population, and that's where you get the need for senior living. We get a ton of calls from people proposing senior living. That's something the city should consider, whether or not they want to keep their aging population within their community and how you do that, and what types of diverse housing can be available for those people. And then on the flip side, you also have the younger working population, which is this other red circle. And those are folks that historically have had a trend of leaving the area for other opportunities. And there's a strong force out there to encourage that workforce to stay within the community, because there are so many business opportunities in this area, but there is a lack of the workforce. And that's because of, largely the lack of affordable housing. So it is important to have that mix of housing opportunity in order to accommodate that younger population, so they can take over when those baby boomers are no longer with us. And then this is just a slide that shows the racial demographics. There's no surprise that there's very little racial diversity in the area. And again, diversity in housing can encourage more racial and ethnic diversity. For housing, this is just a slide that shows how many owner-occupied housing we have versus renter-occupied housing. And we do want to do a little bit of a deeper analysis to see what that right balance should be in a community like Delafield. And then I won't go through these workforce statistics in any detail, just to keep things moving along. But we have been talking to all those other groups, and we do plan on collecting additional data for if we are able to develop the focus group to help them identify the working environments that are needed in the city of Delafield or desirable. So what kind of opportunities and employment can we bring to this area and businesses? And the business Center for Growth, that's a large part of what they do, is they try to bring people to you if you're interested in a certain sector of the business population. And then, it's very important to also talk about quality of life. Quality of life is a major reason why people choose to move to a community or businesses bring their company here. So Delafield has great quality of life features, and there's a lot of recreational opportunities, and it's important that we continue to find ways to maintain and provide more of them. And then I just want to touch on the school system, because you're lucky enough to have 4 different school districts within your community boundaries. And thriving schools are very important in building a strong local economy. They help attract and retain residents and businesses. They increase property values, and they create your future local workforce. And so there's some interesting statistics on here, and it is studied and demonstrated that the money invested in a school system results in an increase in property values. And the reason why this is so important for this cause regarding land use issues is that 3 of the 4 school districts actually have been suffering from a decline in enrollment. And when asking the administration within the school systems, they say that it's a result of lack of housing inventory and diverse housing types for young families. They have a lot of people that want to come to the area, and they do open enroll their students, but families and teachers are interested in moving into the school district. Oconomowoc, on the other hand, and I know the city of Delafield doesn't want to become the next Oconomowoc, but they are the exception. where they do not have a reduction in open enrollment because of the amount of housing development that is occurring. And then I just threw a real quick fun slide in here. Tom and I did go to Carroll University, and they have a really cool new, Tom, help me out, idea lab center. And they can provide, so their goal is to have students provide business analytics to communities, to businesses, based on existing data that we may have or that they have. And they're pretty much open to, if you have a question, let them know, and they might be able to help us. So we were just, trying to come up with some questions that we could ask them, and they put a pin on Cushing Elementary, and we just said, oh, what area would be within a 5-minute walking distance, 10-minute walking distance, and 15-minute walking distance. So that's where you're seeing those 3 colors, and that could be beneficial for finding opportunities for higher density residential, so those kids can walk to school and families can be close to the businesses in the area. So we thought that was kind of fun, but there's a ton of stuff that they can do. That's all that I really have. After Dan is done, we can just talk about what we're proposing to do with that focus group very, very quickly, because Tom already touched on it. Oh, I do have development of the focus group in here. I'm going to skip this because Tom did touch on it, but it will be a mayor-appointed group, and we do intend on having a very diverse membership within that focus group to get a good wide range of views and perspectives. Okay, Dan, I'm going to pass it on to you. I'm hoping you're on Zoom. So Dan
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Dan is a planner with SEH, but he lives in Indiana, so he's going to participate through Zoom.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great opportunity to be with the City of Delafield. Thank you, Mayor Atwell, members of the council, as well as the Plan Commission members. So there are 4 basic types of functions that planning and land use for growth that planners undertake or communities, municipalities consider when looking for growth, as well as how the future vision and your mission for how you're going to grow. Number 1 is your comprehensive plan. Number 2 is your zoning ordinance or zoning code. Number 3 is having an economic development strategy, as well as a plan and policy for economic development. And 4th is your capital improvement plan or your CIP for projects that are prioritized and showing cost. So what is a cost of community service, and how does it apply to your process of going through and identifying your master plan, your zoning code, your economic development strategy, and your CIP? So a cost of community service study, or a COCS, basically is a fiscal analysis subset for planners to use. And what I've called this presentation is the ABCs. It's 5 slides, the 3 things you need to know on each page about what a fiscal analysis subset is as far as a COCS. It's a case study approach used to determine the financial or fiscal contribution of existing land uses. Specifically, it's broken down into looking at what is the $1 of taxes paid and the cost of that service, of the services that are applied to a community as a result. So, for example, if a residential unit or property owner pays $1, how much services do they receive in return? If it is a commercial property owner, they pay $1, how much services do they receive in return? And it's a way of understanding and evaluating how working land and open land is on equal ground with residential, commercial, and industrial land uses. It is a reliable tool for measuring the direct fiscal relationship of these land uses to the taxes that are paid in return. So under the B, COCS were really developed by the American Farmland Trust as a way to assist communities and municipalities that were growing and in response to suburban development or flight from inner cities to suburban areas, to really put a value on what is the cost of agricultural land and the reasons for setting aside agricultural land or preserving it for future development as necessary and just not growing haphazardly. So CIC studies were really meant to be a snapshot in time of the municipal costs versus the revenues, which is why it is a ratio by land use classification. The COCS does not predict the future cost. It is meant to be a ratio or one approach of an analysis for the fiscal impacts of a comprehensive plan. And it does provide a baseline of current information for local officials and citizens to make informed land use decisions and policy decisions as far as how to grow and how to grow within each set of land use classifications. And when I talk about land use classifications, I'm predominantly speaking of residential, commercial, retail, or professional service property, industrial or manufacturing, utilities, open space or parks, and lastly, agricultural, whether that is farmland or livestock. Lastly, a COCS study, the findings are displayed as a set of ratios. And I somewhat alluded to that to compare the annual revenues to annual expenditures for a community's unique mix of land uses. So that ratio is $1 of taxes paid to the amount of services received in a dollar amount. So if you can go to the next slide. What is the purpose of a COCS? It's important for our citizens and local leaders to understand the relationship between residential growth and commercial growth as it applies to agricultural land uses and the conservation of conservation of land, as well as the impact of that land on the community and its budget, which is why it is a subset as a financial analysis in the planning process. So there, under B, what are the three major misconceptions that are commonly made in communities facing growth pressure? Open land, including productive farms and forests, or they are an interim land use that should be developed to their highest and best use. That is not always the case. It may sound easy, and it's the easy way to grow onto open fields and green space, but that may not be the highest and best use at that time, or the highest and best use for that typical or that type of land use. Agricultural land gets an unfair tax break when it's assessed at its current use value or farming and ranching instead of its potential use. And number three, residential development will lower property taxes by increasing the tax base. That is one of the major misconceptions that a COCS study will reveal for your community at a moment in time this year based upon the taxes paid in a prior year and the services provided or the expenses. And under C, as far as purpose, what's the understanding? An understanding that working in agricultural farmland and open lands generate less tax revenue than residential, commercial, or industrial properties, but they require little public infrastructure and fewer services, which means they have less expenses. So that's the purpose, to understand how each one of those land uses are on equal ground to the dollar of taxes paid, to understand how much in expenses or services they are receiving. So if you go to the next slide, Amy. So what are the steps for preparing a COCS study? It involves three basic steps. Number one, we collect the data on local revenues and expenditures, your levies, and going through what your levy is, and including by police department, fire department, public works, public utilities. Each levy all that information is collected to determine the revenues and the expenditures. And we look at your budgets as well as your distribution of taxes. And then we group those revenues and expenditures and allocate them to a community's major land use category. Third, we analyze the data to calculate a revenue to expenditure ratio for each land use category. Now, as an example, under C, what I've done is shown a median cost of community service result that the American Farmland Trust has put together over 30 years and hundreds of these being done. And the work that I've done, they're usually pretty similar. But when you look at this medium COCS cost result, it shows that on average, for every dollar of taxes paid, a commercial business, retail, or service is receiving maybe 30 cents in services back. So they're actually donating into the costs or the budget or the levy. Agricultural land, because there's homes on it, or depending on the size of the agricultural property, could be every dollar of taxes, they receive 37 cents in return in services. Now, when you look at it from the perspective of a residential home, consider that per acre, depending on the density, you would have for every dollar of taxes paid, they may receive anywhere in this case $1.10 to $1.20, and here it's shown $1.16 in services. Because you have, for example, in the city of Delafield, there are 2.18 persons per home. In general, those individuals use the libraries, they use the downtown, they are using, and depending on the number of units per acre, you're providing more services to that residential unit than the dollar of taxes they pay. So on average, because residential land uses don't cover their costs, they must be subsidized by other community land uses, whether it's commercial, retail, professional service, agricultural, utility, or manufacturing or industrial. That way we can understand how do we not only convert agricultural land to residential land uses so that it's balanced. How much land use do we need to balance or tax neutralize and offset our residential development with commercial? Now, I always preface this by stating, if you choose to be a bedroom community that is 90% residential, you're going to have to understand that you're going to have a high tax rate, because you can see for every dollar of taxes paid, you're getting more in services. That's the decision you make in your planning process. But this helps to understand the COCS process in the study and how it applies to planning. So what's the end game in the use of a COCS study? It's up to the communities to balance their goals, such as maintaining affordable housing, creating jobs, and conserving land. But with good planning, these goals can complement rather than compete with each other. In fact, COCS studies give communities another tool to make decisions about their future. Whether that be over a 5-year period, when I say futures, a 10-year period, or a 20-year period. It dispels the myth that residential development leads to lower taxes. As you can see on average from the American Farmland Trust, you're receiving, as a resident property owner, you're receiving more services than the taxes you pay in general. Now, if, for example, it is a home valued at $1 million assessed value, and there's 2.18 persons in that home, and it sits on 1 acre, it's probably paying its fair share, and it's closer to $1 to $1 of taxes paid to $1 of services. But if you have 1 acre of land that has 10 units on it, and those homes each have 5 persons living in that home, those parents are going to drive on the streets, the children are going to go to the schools, and you figure now, instead of having 2.1 persons per acre, or 2 people per acre, you now have 50 people on that acre with 10 homes that may require police service, fire service, the street services, curbs and gutters. So it does depend on the amount of, or the value of the homes and the density. Number 2 under the ABC, the B. Differential assessment programs give landowners an unfair break. So we're dispelling that myth, that agriculture really doesn't get an unfair tax break. Everybody stands on its own individually of their land use. And farmland is really an interim land use just waiting around to be developed. That's not true. It does pay taxes and receives a service, and there's a cost to that, and it's not waiting around to be developed. Farmland really can be valued or considered a preservation of land that still pays taxes, but supports further residential development because it is subsidizing the residential development. So on average, the end game, because residential land uses do not cover their costs from taxes paid, they must be subsidized by other community land uses or develop that balance of commercial, of residential to commercial to industrial to open space to agricultural. And that converting agricultural land to residential use should not be seen as a way to balance local budgets or grow in a fiscally responsible manner. And by understanding the COCS, you can quantify that value. Next slide. So how can the COCS study benefit any municipality? It becomes a tool in the process of comprehensive and master planning to make informed decisions as to land use. I once was working with a community that they wanted to double the size of their, in working with them, they wanted to, the mayor and the council had a plan to double the size of residential units in the city by annexing property outside the city. And my first question to them was, do you realize what impact that's going to have on your tax rate? And I said, well, for every single family home you build, every dollar taxes they pay, they're going to require anywhere from $1.16 to $1.25 in taxes. That means you have to offset that development with either commercial manufacturing or leaving agricultural space open. And after they thought about it, they reconsidered their allocation of how many units they would develop and really made them consider the choices they were making as far as land use development itself, to be fiscally responsible in their growth from the perspective of land use growth. Under B, COCS studies assist decision-making for planning and economic development, which is why this was presented to the mayor and the administration as a potential support analysis to help making those decisions to grow financially responsible based upon the allocation of land for that growth, and setting the benchmarks for residential investment to offset potential COCS ratio impacts. What does that mean? That means that if you are going to approve a subdivision that has homes that have a value of $200,000, the amount of taxes that they pay to the amount of services they receive just increases that ratio. It may be up to $1.35 to $1.45. Now, if you have a home that is valued at $750,000, you may find that that ratio may be $1 to $1.05, or even $1 to $1. So how do we determine what the investment should be or the assessed value should be as close as possible in order to have $1 per dollar? Now, we can't always be exact, but it sets the benchmark for what developers should build or what your community would like. Now, it doesn't say it has to be that, because you do want a balance of residential that is not only workforce development homes or affordable homes up to a higher value, so that it is an open community for all income individuals. And understanding the fiscal implications of your decision for growth. That's really important because it will, as I talked about the previous example, when I was working with that client on doubling the size of residential, they reconsidered because of the fiscal implications they only went about to 30% of what they originally wanted. And they decided that they would come back in 5 years and determine if they would change that or adjust their residential development. So it allows for being fiscally responsible, which is important to the controller, the chief financial officer of the community, or the clerk treasurer. And it allocates land uses based upon the actual classification. So if there's any questions on the ABCs of cost of community services, I'd be more than happy to answer those, either now or at the end. But that's just a general overview of how a cost of COCS can be helpful during your economic development and planning process.
Okay, so Tom, I don't know, the next step is to decide whether or not you want to take action on the budget item, which would be considering the contract that SEH, that we're proposing. There's actually a couple of steps to it. One would be to conduct the cost of services study, which Dan is proposing. That would take about 1 month time. And that's a cost of $12,500. And then we'd also like to develop the focus group. I know, Tom discussed it already to have some diverse ideas on what we can do with particular properties in the city moving forward in order to be proactive. And then that focus group would provide recommendations to the Plan Commission and Common Council to consider. So at this time, I know it was brought up in public comment, we wouldn't be amending the land use plan or zoning code. The focus group would be providing recommendations, and it would be a citizen-led focus group for consideration. So, and as part of that, we would inventory existing land uses, review existing market information, and again, look at the services that are provided to particular properties. Where are their needs? What types of needs are there in certain areas within the city? The reason why there's a variable budget in the focus group creation is that the public engagement piece would cost an extra $1,500 to do a community-wide survey, and then to create a website and leave it up there for the duration of the project so that the entire citizenry can see all of the materials that are presented to the focus group and the minutes, and we'll have maps and stuff. That would be another $1,500.
Amy, can you go over the focus group one more time? The activities that they're going to pursue? Inventory land. You're going to look at the services provided. What else would the focus group be doing?
They're really going to, well, first of all, we're going to do a SWOT analysis and visual preference survey with them too. So that's how it will be led. And then we will share the information from this group and also the community-wide survey, so to give them a really good background of the interests of the people in the city. And then it will be largely, there will be 4 meetings with the focus group. I think the goal is to have about 10 people. It's important to keep it focused so that we can make progress. But it would be really map-based, and we would have a lot of maps available during the meetings, and we would identify areas in the city that where there's a high interest for redevelopment or new development, and then look at the existing land use inventory and land use plan and see where there may be some ideal areas for potential change, maybe changes in density for residential or changes in business type uses. Are there any areas where multifamily or senior living is appropriate, in order to be more proactive with the folks that are coming in and making proposals. So there is a concern that the review time period is very lengthy. So if the majority of the population thinks that another use is appropriate and they're interested in it, then we would like to be proactive and make that easier for somebody to get through the process. So it's really
Go ahead.
So at the end, we're thinking we're going to have 8.5 by 11 sheets, a final document with maps that show the focus group's recommendations for different land uses that they think are appropriate for those properties. And it could be variable. Some of these might be planned mixed use categories where I don't think the goal is to dictate exactly what somebody does somewhere. It's just to consider options.
Sure, and I think this is a great idea, but a couple of questions on it. And you're going to do 2 things, and you mentioned 2 things. You're going to survey residents. Is that accurate?
We will be doing a community-wide survey, and the city staff will help market that information. And then we would summarize So we would be very thoughtful in giving a upfront presentation so that they know what our goal is, and then come up with questions that try to address different issues, and then we would summarize those results for the focus group.
Okay, and the other half of the coin that you've mentioned is to meet the needs of developers. We get a lot of developers coming in saying your ordinances, et cetera, are not compatible with what developers want to do. How do we reconcile if the citizen survey is inconsistent with what developers are coming to us asking for?
Yeah, well, I think the idea is to come to a conclusion or a compromise on what's the best use for those properties. So we're not trying to accommodate any developer that comes in and wants to do something. It's intended to include a diverse group so that we come up with what we think is the best use for the property, or what that group is, and then you would make those final decisions to help the developer along. There's still going to be developers that have to come in and go through the entire land use plan amendment and rezone process if they come up with something different. So it's not intended to just cater to the development community.
Great, and that's the point that I want to get across. I want it citizen-driven.
Yes.
In my opinion, citizen-driven to meet the needs that, Tom and the mayor laid out, not developer-driven per se.
I mean, the focus group will include a variety, so, you will have a mix of interests.
Amy, this is Jim Meyer. I've been involved in focus groups as a trial attorney, and I just want to question is how is it set up in terms of what do they know their responsibilities are? Will it be in writing? Is it going to be informal? Are they going to be charging for their time? Is there a set amount that's paid for them? Are they volunteers? These are some of the questions that I have and then how much do they disclose from their meetings and how much do they not? Because typically I'm doing these on juries.
Sure.
So we're getting a focus group on a jury on liability and damages. I'm just saying, has this been you've got experience here to do this?
So the focus group will be made up of volunteers. The SCH staff that will lead it will be paid. And we will also provide information on these properties that are of focus, what kind of services are already available to those properties, and so we will have research and background information for them to review. So they'll be volunteer. All of the information at the meetings will be disclosed to the public. They will be open meetings. It will be mayor appointed. We're hoping to accomplish it in 4 meetings. As far as rules, I mean, it will be informal, but there will be an established, there will be ground rules and an explanation of what their role is as we start the project.
And their identities will be public.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be mayor appointed.
It's
up to the council to make that determination. And I'm not questioning your wisdom or judgment.
I think one last...
I'm just saying I want to... Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say a good example to think of in our recent past, the Highway C Committee, that was appointed by...
Can't hear you.
Sorry. I say a good example to look at back in the past is the Highway C Committee, where we talked about doing the redevelopment downtown with the bridge and so forth. That was a mayor-appointed committee. We had a council person on there, we had a planning commercial person on there, and then other citizens within the city of Delafield. And again, it was a diverse group. That would be the model that is in my mind as to how to implement that.
Okay.
Amy, one last thing. From my experience doing with these focus groups, it was really important to get a diverse group because then you get a cross-section of people, like in a jury or not, to get different input because from my experience, the lawyers learned a lot about these informal focus groups, jurors, because we wouldn't think of these things like being in a jury room. They think of things that lawyers don't. So it's really important to get a diverse group that feels comfortable together and not having a dominant personality control it.
Yes. That is the goal, for everybody to learn each other's perspectives and come to common ground. So I've had experience leading focus groups, and Darren has had experience leading focus groups, so we're comfortable that it will be a successful operation. And if it's not, and it's all over the place, I guess that becomes part of the report to you too. But our goal is to get some consensus.
Matt, if there's concern about mayor appointed, a compromise you could consider would be mayor appointed with confirmation by the council.
Well, you're reading my notes right off my page. Yeah, and I want a diversity because obviously there are different.
So do I.
Yeah,
There's no value in the process if it's not.
absolutely. We don't want a controversial result.
Right.
So Amy, seeing that is on the timeline in the proposal, there's a website development that's ongoing from the beginning.
Yes.
What is that used for? Is that for access to the information that's being discussed and facilitation of the community survey, or what is it?
It's for both. So I think it's intended to be a website specific to this project, so people can go straight to the link of this site, and then all of our information from that we've shared at tonight's meeting, our presentation would be included, as well as anything that is prepared for the focus group. They could go to the website to look at the materials before the meetings, rather than sending out hard copies. I know they can get emails too. Again, the list of the members would be part of that website, and all of their recommendations and meeting minutes would be part of it, and then the survey would be on there as well.
So minutes and the coordination of those meetings wouldn't be done by city staff, that would be SEH?
We are proposing, so this is actually a really tight budget for the type of project that we're doing. So we are going to leverage city staff as much as we can. So I believe, I don't know if I have it in here.
And I'm just curious if there's redundancies in that $1,500 to what our website currently offers as far as.
Yeah, and we did talk, Steve, we talked with city staff about whether or not we could just use what the city has available, and I believe it was determined by city staff that it would be more efficient and easier if it was a developed site. And correct me if I'm wrong, because we're certainly open to either.
Yeah. Personally, I think for the cost, it makes a lot of sense as far as effectiveness of a communication tool. The city's website is quite cluttered, and I think this would simplify the process of finding information and providing a direct source of information to a topic that's of this importance.
To have a dedicated website, that's what.
Yep. Yes.
Can't use Google Docs or.
Well,
I withdraw the question.
yeah, then you're sharing. This would be anybody could come and look at the information then. So
It's a public record, right?
Yes.
So do you need a motion?
We
I
do.
do have one more question. So Amy, I think Dan mentioned that this is a point-in-time study. Have there been historical trends to see what the benefits and how they change if you add people that are, more housing that is kind of like a loss leader to bring in more business and spending more dollars downtown? Have those studies been done?
I'm
Or is this
sorry,
part
I
of that?
can't. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
So has there been a historical study? So if you do multiple cost of community service studies where you can see the differences of when you do build residential housing that have more costs and use more services, but they're bringing in revenue to downtown to
Sure.
offset that? Is that
Yeah,
part of this, or is that?
Dan, can you hear that? He's on mute.
I caught that. First thing you should do is check to make sure you're not on mute. I apologize. So a cost of service study can be done over a period to see historical costs and that ratio. What it entails is identifying what the amount of land use was in say, for example, 2016, 2014, 2012, 2010, whichever years you pick, and then associating that with the budget at that time. Typically, they're done for a one-year period as the case study approach for that time frame in that year. You could go back and redo them, but typically that's not done. I've never seen it done, but you can.
I think it'd be an interesting analysis.
But I think that's part of the balance issue too, is residents might cost a little bit more, but they help benefit the
Right, the
commercial
business side,
component.
yeah.
So there's,
Right.
that's part of the balance.
It becomes it becomes a cost efficiency issue. Is the information that comes out of the historical data worth the cost of doing that? That's what it really comes down to.
So if this is approved tonight, this timeline's realistic, you think you're gonna be done with the cost study by April 15th, and then this is gonna wrap up on or around the 30th of June?
Yeah, the only thing I will say, I want to be honest, I am going to be out for 2 weeks, the first week of April or the first and second week of April. And if you add, so when I laid out the time frame, I did not include the public engagement piece to it because it was an add-on. So we would have to add the public engagement piece, which the nice thing about this is the cost of community services study and the public engagement survey could be done around the same time. So we can certainly try to get that out before the 1st of April, which is when I'll be out for 2 weeks. If we can't, things might get bumped back 2 weeks or so. But I know it's a high priority for the city to get this moving and to have recommendations available in June. So if we have to speed things up, we can speed up our focus group meetings too.
All right, and then exercising the options, including the website, as recommended by staff, that's $28,500. Is that what I'm? Correct. Okay. I'll make a recommendation to approve the proposal as presented by SEH for a total of $28,500 with the formation of the Citizens Focus Group appointed by the mayor and approved by the Common Council.
Second.
Did you, Tim, I'm sorry, did you say 25,000?
I said $28,500.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that,
I can make it 25.
no, I just, then we'd have to pull a couple things out.
Okay, so just to make it clear, it's the council that's voting on this. So is there any discussion?
I have only one comment. I think this is a great idea. I know because we're trying to save money, we're trying to do it efficiently as possible, because I know these studies, a new master plan can be 100,000. And just so people don't misunderstand us, I'm all for making some tweaks, but I've also said on the side that we may identify ourselves as such a community that we wish to have high services, and we may be back in 5 years and we may have to approve another referenda. Hopefully it's not as big, but if we can't make it, maybe there's a reason we're not making it. It's because that's our choice. And I think that's on the table too. So just so people don't misunderstand where I'm coming from, I have no problem with, that's how I sold the referendum. Because we're really under the state law that I'm not complaining about, but it puts the onus on us to really sell our program. And that's what we did, and it was approved. So this will be good data for this 5-year period, and that's why it's really worth the money.
I have one question and a comment, and it's just I agree with Jim. I think it's a great idea. Like I said before, it needs to be citizen-driven. One question I have is just, and I appreciate everybody that helped put this together, is, Tom mentioned in his presentation that we have a preliminary goal that equates to an annual net income or net new growth over the next 5 years of approximately 29.4 million. So let's call it 30 million. We got Hendricks for 25. We've got the Hawthorne development for 22. We got St. John's that was just sold for 7 point something, which is yet undeveloped. And we have the medical complex. Now all these, one's been approved, 2 have been approved. But that totals, if all those come to fruition, that totals 125 million of 150 million that we need, 30 million times over 5 years. So is that the extent, is that the deficit then, assuming all these are just 25 million over 5 years or an extra 5 million? Would that be accurate? I just want us to be accurate in the scope of the problem, that we're not at death's door here. And I'm reluctant to do anything drastic. I think these assessments are going to be very valuable. I like what Lynn had to say, that this is a tool. This isn't something that we're going to use exclusively to define what development goes where, that somebody comes in and says, well, this is your assessed value, this is what we're going to do for you, and we're put in a position of having to approve it. That's obviously not what this is. So I just want to throw that marker out there, and I do support this.
So can I just make one comment on that? And I know we need to get moving, but all of those developments that you just mentioned all required multiple steps of review and approval because the plans and codes did not accommodate them. And that has been one of the concerns of several of those property owners, is that process is so long here, and there's no understanding of clear expectations of what they are going to be able to do at the end of it. So that's part of why this is an initiative.
That's a great point.
And all three of the projects that you're referenced, we don't have a shovel in the ground on any of them.
But they've been approved. Two of them.
Two of them have been approved.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Present. I need to explain why my company is in conversations with negotiating a channel partnership with SEH, so I think it would be inappropriate for me to make comment or to vote, just to avoid possible conflict of interest.
Great, appreciate that. So noted. Okay, I think we're going for a break now. Is that correct?
5 minutes.
5-minute break.
Not a minute later. We're a little behind schedule.
Which meeting? Yes. Okay, we are back. We are back live. Color. My mic is on. Okay.
Okay, you're doing.
We're ready to get started again?
Yeah.
Amy, are you leading from here?
You have
or
to
is
share
it
your
Tom?
screen. I'm leading.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so we are significantly behind schedule, which is fine. But we're going to do this.
Not to me, it's not.
Well, so what we're going to do is we're going to just modify it slightly. So we're trying to do a SWOT analysis. I sent you guys questions ahead of time, hoping you would come prepared. And we've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So all of the lighter questions were just there intended to help you think through your answers. So we're going to go around the table one at a time. But there's 14 of you or so. And so this is intended to be a very quick bullet list type thing. Just like when you do SWOT analysis in most places, you get a couple of Post-its. You write down very briefly what you think is a strength. It could be specific to a particular development or just a general asset of the city. But I'm just going to give you this example. We want your response to fit on a yellow Post-it note with regular font. Not this big sheet, not even an eighth of this sheet, but your response literally needs to fit on a Post-it, okay? And we're going to do a lightning round where I'm just going to call your name off and you're going to blurt out a response. With that said, because we're only going to have time to go around twice for each question, write down whatever you can think of on the paper that I have there, and we will include all of that in the results. So if you don't have an opportunity to say something you wanted to say, then just write it on the paper. We'll collect them at the end and make sure that they're part of the report, okay? And then you have my email. You can always email me if you need to. Does that make sense? Everyone's good?
Yep.
Matt, your responses, you get 2 per thing, and it has to fit on a yellow Post-it, your answer. Short, sweet, lightning,
Sure.
fast. Okay. So, and Darren is, I think he's sharing his screen, right? And he is ready. He's going to do all of the typing, and I'm going to sit back and call off your names. And I'm also going to be the police and cut you off if you talk too long, okay? So we'll start with Dan. Strengths, okay, again, I'm just going to say, what do you enjoy most about the city? There's a whole bunch of questions that you were given to help you come up with your answers. But so we'll start with you, Dan.
Short answers that fit on one.
You're already up.
Small town, Lake Nagawicca, KMSD.
Your mic.
I'm sorry. Small town, Lake Nagawicca, KMSD, and access to I-94.
Perfect. That's a perfect example. Jim.
Single-family lake homes, 4 freeway interchanges.
You good?
Yes, leave it there.
Are you let me know if you're not catching something. Okay, Laura.
Be country feel and a sense of community.
Tim.
Quiet, safe, convenient, and diverse businesses and housing.
Got it. Mayor.
I'm going to go with semi-rural environment, the benefit of 2 city centers, one being Highway 83 and 94, and the contrast that we have in beautiful downtown Delafield, and then safety and security.
With the 2 city centers, the downtown, will you put 8394, please? Ed.
The size, festivities, the public works service that we get, peaceful, and the city is close to a lot of activities in the area.
You might have to slow down just,
Sorry.
just a notch. You get it all?
No.
Okay. Public, peaceful, Can you start over?
Public works services,
Public
peaceful, festivities, and the size of the city.
Okay, festivities and the size of the city. Matt?
Small, quiet, quaint, and festivities.
Dave, I'm going to skip you, but just be prepared to, I know, hold on, to unmute when I get to you. Okay, Phil.
Distinct destination, small town, rural, recreation, variety of shopping destinations.
We've got small town, rural, variety of shopping destinations.
What was recreation on there?
Destination.
And recreation?
And recreation. Mr. Ryer?
Biking, hiking, skiing, walk downtown, rivers, lakes. Get that?
No.
One at a time.
Biking, hiking, skiing.
Biking, hiking, skiing.
Rivers, lakes, and
Rivers, lakes.
Rivers, lakes, and parks.
And parks. You done?
Walk the dog.
And walking the dog. Walkability. Dean, Mr. Dean.
Location, location, location. Country living near big city benefits.
Bob?
It's a walkable downtown. It's very dog friendly. I love the coffee shops and restaurants downtown. And St. John's Park by the river is really nice.
Jackie?
The school systems. Now, I mean, I don't want to repeat,
Yeah.
because it's
Okay.
the same things.
Perfect. Dave? I don't want to skip Dave.
At the community, the access to the freeways and the shopping.
Does anyone have anything else to add to strengths?
I would like to add schools and a unique downtown.
Okay. Yep. And it's okay for you to repeat, because then we get an idea of priority and importance. Okay. Anyone else?
I'll go with history.
History.
I would say the restaurants and convenience to Milwaukee.
Okay. Convenience to Milwaukee.
I would add the downtown.
Downtown.
I would add Lake Nagawicca.
Going once. Going twice. Okay, we're moving on. That was awesome. It really was. Okay, weaknesses. What activities, services, or development are currently missing or could be enhanced from Delafield? Should we go the other way? No?
Start with me.
Dan?
Years ago, we used to have a recycle center. I miss that.
Okay.
That's
So this, not to sound weird, but you ask for weaknesses, and my first thought is we don't have many.
None.
None. But I also will say that our approval process on development is a weakness. And I think some of our park improvements need to be finished.
Got it. Laura?
For me, it would have to be too many vacant businesses, especially Perkins, the old BP station. To me, they're getting to be eyesores, and that's a real weakness.
You want to say Perkins BP gas station, please? Tim?
We need to improve the walkability connections between neighborhoods. Downtown closes at 9 o'clock. It's a complaint. Oh, there's not a nightlife.
Right. I agree.
And we don't have a leaf pickup. We get complaints about burning all the time.
I'm going to copy Tim's.
Exactly.
Exactly.
The last three. Ed?
Copy what Laura said, and also if we can increase the manufacturing business opportunities in the city.
Manufacturing opportunity. There is a cool app for that we will look at as part of our focus group. I didn't get into that. Good properties for manufacturing. What did Laura say? She said...
The eyesores.
Too many eyesores? Is that the one you wanted?
Yeah.
Too many eyesores. Matt?
As much as I like downtown, I want more of it, so more shops. And, yeah, complaints on burning.
I don't know if we're going to solve the burning issue here, but okay.
I gotta say it, though, those are the calls.
The message is there. Phil?
I'll have to echo the eyesores of vacant buildings and the need to make further connections with bike paths around the city and to other communities.
Got it. Mr. Ryer?
Lack of public space for sporting activities, including but not limited to ice skating, tennis, basketball, and pickleball.
Pickleball's a big one. You got all that?
Kind of dovetailing with that, lack of our own city recreational department.
Lack of own city recreational department. Bob?
Yeah, I'd like to see more restaurants along the lake, and lake access to downtown would be nice to have. And the intersection of 83 and Gulf Road is always bottlenecked up. If we could figure something to do there, it'd be nice.
Access to downtown, lake access to downtown. Intersection at 83 and 90.
And Gulf Road.
And Gulf Road, yeah, okay. 83 and Gulf Road intersection. Jackie?
Downtown tree replacements. I'd like to see some and more. Also, eco-friendly practices like mulching instead of burning.
Mr. Greenway?
Walkability between neighborhoods and the downtown.
And round two. Anyone on this table over here on my left? Nope. Thinking? High table, anyone? Mr. Greenway? Okay. Very well. Okay, opportunities. This is kind of looking at strengths in a different way. What do you see in other communities that you wish was available in Delafield, or what amenities are within Delafield that the city can leverage and enhance and convert to a strength? So is there anything where you think we external things you see that you wish you saw here?
I guess I read this as what makes the communities vibrant, and I said the active downtown, concerts, festivals, and the chamber events.
Okay.
But you're looking more for, what more could we?
I would look at it more like because what makes other communities vibrant? What do you see in other areas that you'd like to see here? What do you see in other communities that you would like to see in Delafield that maybe you don't see?
I like to think they look to us for what they can do.
And if you don't have anything, I mean, this
I really
it starts to get harder to think about it in this way.
Jim?
Well, it's, I think we have some history where we're cooperating with neighbors, and I also think when we plan, we should also coordinate our land use plans with neighbors. And the opportunity is that some of the things we say should be here already exist, but they're not here. So I think we need to account for those things. So that's an opportunity.
Wait, can you say that again?
Well, you said, what things do other towns have that we don't? What do we have that other towns don't? But I would say, as a region, we have a lot together, and we need to recognize that.
Okay. Laura?
Well, my BFF and I like to go to Lake Geneva, and we go there often because of the variety. I see that we need more variety of restaurants, mainly family-oriented also. That's something that I feel is really lacking. The other one would be, I would like to see groups kind of adopt some of these planting boxes. So that we can, because when I go to other communities and I see more flowers in boxes and that, and it really does enhance the downtown areas. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Tim?
All right, I'll hit nightlife again, and plan steady growth would be nice. Instead of having to be here to suggest what we need, it'd be nice if we just had a menu to pick from, right? With say we want that one, not that one. And just two things, if I could snap my finger and get something just like it in Delafield that other communities have. I'll give examples. Heartland's Beer Garden in their splash pad area is great, and the Sharon Lynn Wilson PAC Center in Brookfield. Those types of things would be huge. I'm jealous of those features that in other towns.
Sharon Wilson is the name of it, Sharon Wilson. Good.
I know Park and Rec's trying to build one over in Liberty Park, but we'll get there, right?
So
Mayor?
for this one, my first one I think is unrealistic in the sense that it should have been planned for long ago, but we don't have a light industrial park which delivers a lot of value and helps support the residential community as far as taxes and so forth. I'll redo one of Tim's again on this one. Nightlife after 8 o'clock in the city of Delafield doesn't really exist too much. And, I like going to events and stuff downtown and having a band stage. It's just an amenity that would be really nice to have in Delafield.
Got it. Ed?
I also like events. I'd like to see if we could somehow develop out a weekend music fest throughout the year, a couple of them. I know they've had, ones with jazz and all that. And I like to brew beers, so what about like an Oktoberfest in a downtown area? Those are pretty popular in other cities.
Matt?
The stage at Liberty Park, the band shell, whatever you want to call it. That's the one thing that I think is missing, that location where we can have jazz in the park on Thursday nights. You can have Shakespeare in the park whenever you want, art festivals. So the band shell, the stage at Liberty Park.
Movies.
Phil?
two things. One is it would be great to have an additional area for recreational things like tennis courts, a dog area, that kind of thing. And secondly, I really like what I've seen in other communities when it comes to the conservation neighborhoods, like the Hawthorne Farm, where the environment is preserved with more densely placed homes, and actually, and with their private paths. I think that's an asset for a neighborhood to have their private path system.
Do you get that private pass? Oh, you have good hearing. Mr. Ryer?
I would share Matt's statement on the performance stage, which would include, of course, the beer garden, which is near and dear to my heart, and continuing entertainment and the use of Liberty Park as a centerpiece for future cultural events for the city of Delafield to enhance its brand to the community around us. And for my own view is completion of the trail system encircling Lake Nagawicca and the city of Delafield by connecting the east, northeast, northwest, and west quadrants and south of I-94. A lot of quadrants.
One more time?
Yeah.
Completion of trail system encircling Lake Nagawicca.
Slow down. Completion of trails circling Lake Nagawicca.
And the city of Delafield.
And the city of Delafield.
By connecting the east, northeast, northwest, and west quadrants and south of I-94.
That's not fitting on a Post-it note.
Very small fingers. Very small fingers.
Small letters.
Wayne?
Opportunity to develop the Nichols landfill as they did in Franklin to turn it into a recreational area for dog parks and other recreational activities. It's got 40 acres, plus we have no parks south of 94 for the District 4 residents.
You got that Nichols land too, right? Yep, okay. Bob?
I don't have anything new. Everyone pretty much answered. I do agree that I would love to see a nice walkway all the way around the lake would be great.
Walk around the lake? Yeah. A walkway around the lake?
I'd like an indoor climbing gym.
Okay. Mr. Greenway?
They've been covered.
Didn't you know that indoor climbing gym, it's in the budget for 2021?
Hey, they're really cool and they're a great draw, especially with all the millennials.
Any other add-ons? Anyone? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Good. Okay, this is another challenging one. Threats, challenges. So what trends or issues, if not addressed, could pose negative challenges to Delafield? You know, and I mean, just one that's in our face right now is COVID affects, you know, the success of Delafield or the downtown and what have you. So any external trends or issues you see that could affect your success?
This is pretty general, but a failing economy, which I thought of with COVID.
Perfect. Jim?
Threats and challenges, we've touched on it tonight. The cost of police and fire versus state limits on taxation. Another one that is an old one with me is we have bad water downtown. We rely on the private sector to solve that problem.
Anything else?
No.
Laura?
I would have to agree to economy. That's going to be a big one. Also, what I'm hearing from people that are in the trades is that there's going to be a great shortage very soon of materials for building, which could hamper all building. So that's going to be a real challenge.
Tim?
I'd say our changing demographic We've got declining school enrollment, even though we're building new houses. And also we've got an aging population, and so appropriate housing and facilities for them.
Mayor?
Yeah, I've got one, and I think it's the reason why we're here tonight. Not enough new smart growth to offset operating costs and need for services.
Got it? Ed?
Yeah, we need to somehow attract a more middle-income environment for housing. A lot of the subdivisions are great looking, but we need to hit that demographic that would attract more here into the city.
I'll second the mayor.
Bill?
Balancing affordable housing with the changing demographics of the elderly moving out and younger people trying to purchase affordable housing.
That's going to be a tough one.
Make sure we continue our igloos in the city. I don't want those igloos being lost.
Continue what? I'm sorry.
Igloos, the globes.
Oh,
Keep the globes.
you hate the globes?
I love the globes.
You love the globes.
Keep the
Especially
globes.
belfries.
Don't take them away.
Continue the igloos.
Economic development, globes.
Okay. Wayne?
Balancing individual residential housing with multi-use housing so that we can change with our demographics.
Bob?
Just the perception that we're not business friendly. I think that's a definite threat.
Jackie?
I agree with Bob about the perception that we're not business friendly. I think that's a concern. Also, I agree with several people who spoke about affordable single-family homes. I think that's a threat. And finally, one I haven't heard mentioned yet is water use. We need to be mindful of the carrying capacity, that's a term, of the aquifer from which we all draw. The carrying capacity. You can look that up. You can come to my class tomorrow.
Any other? Oh, Mr. Greenway.
I think the housing options for the aging elderly.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything? Anything? Anyone? Very good. I think this is an awesome list and very comprehensive. If you will share this information with you, if you think of something that you really want added that you didn't put in, just let me know. Or if you wrote anything down that you didn't have a chance to say, feel free to share that with me, but that's really good information. So we'll do something similar online with the public engagement piece and then also with the focus group. And, you know, one thing that'll be interesting is to see how much they all merge together, how similar or different they are. It will be one interesting piece. So perhaps we won't share this until we're able to do that with the other groups, because I think it is interesting to get the information from different perspectives. But this is a really, really well-rounded list. And we did it in really good time, too. So I'm super impressed. I was kind of worried about that, but I think the Post-it trick
Scared us.
might have worked. It scared you. Okay, so Darren and I just need a minute here to move on to the next thing. We're going to do a visual preference survey. Oh, actually, I will get instructions out right away because you all need your phones. So hold on. I want to share my screen. No. Oh, we're on the website. Can I share? Can I go to the website? How do I get to the website?
Wait a moment.
You know, like I want to be on here.
Which one? I
You do
have heard it,
Cahoots?
I haven't played it. The kids play
That'd be
it.
perfect. Yeah.
It's hard for me to see.
Here, hold on.
Do you play it?
Out with that.
When you try to share a
Just
screen.
want to make sure. What's happening? Go to, do you have your phones?
Yep.
Try Menti, is it menti.com? Menti.com, MENTI.com. And it's going to ask you for a password, which I have to give you.
What was that again?
Can you spell that again?
M as in Mary, E as in Edward, N as in Nancy, T as in Tim, I as in igloo.com.
Got there.
Got it? Okay, so you'll get a password. Hold on.
Amy, again, is this just the council and the planning commission members?
Plan Commission and Council. And for the public who's here, we'll do similar stuff for, as part of the public engagement piece.
Menti code, is that
Menti.com.
Mentimeter?
Yeah, Mentimeter.
Yep. Are you seeing it?
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Mentimeter?
I'm presenting, you're in Menti. Does anyone need help?
Oh, is that the code?
The code, yes. Can you see it?
266.
No, I can't see from here.
Hold on. Okay,
I
it's
can't get
it's
up there.
6266 6754.
.com. Do you have like a browsing software?
I'm in.
No, this is all I got, just the emails.
And if you can't get Mentimeter to work, there is a paper and pen next to you, and you can fill in you can fill them in.
Otherwise, I can just listen.
There's a hard copy. Where do we get a hard copy?
Here's one right here.
Right next to Jim. Everyone has one right next to them.
All right, so you're just going to fill out.
Just do it on paper.
Oh, sure. Okay, thanks.
Is that it?
754.
Okay. Here's one.
754.
You got it. Yeah. So you'll be served.
I use Cahoots. It's a similar. Do you ever use that one?
One is.
Oh,
It's where everybody gets to take a test online and use
okay.
your phone.
Well, thank you.
I teach hunter safety with it. The kids love
We
it
hid
because also
them
they
because
get to
we
use their
don't
phones in
want,
class.
we didn't want, because it would be live.
Where?
And then we don't want people to be influenced. We'll
Brandy
do it at
Brook?
the end.
Okay.
Where,
That's really what I
on a
was
few.
Yeah,
Yeah, hold on. Okay, is everybody in menti.com?
Got it.
Everyone's in, everyone. Raise your hand if you need help. No. Okay, and you have the password.
Yep.
And you're on image 1.
Yep.
Okay, so what we're going to do, and Darren, you can fill in the blanks. We're going to do this, again, it's going to be pretty fast. So the first couple might take a little bit longer because we're getting used to it, but you enter, just rank the image. Don't necessarily think about where, some of these might fit in one area of the city and not others. Just look at it. Do you like it or not? I mean, is that a fair statement? Do you like the image or not? You might not like the color, but you might like the scale.
I think it's really your first impression. Your gut feel. Don't overthink it because, like Amy said, we'll be going through these about every 10 or 15 seconds. So it's just a quick hit. And then we'll get the results summarized, but the results won't be on the screen, but we'll kind of get a general feel, and then at the end, we can hit the highlights, the slides that you really like, and the slides that really people did not like,
and then there'll be a bunch of stuff in between. But we can get you all the results for this exercise, in the next week, but we can hit the highlights
Yeah.
after.
And this is what we envisioned for Delafield? Is that?
Delafield.
Okay.
Somewhere.
Somewhere. I mean, obviously, some of this stuff fits in some places and not others. Just please try not to think too hard about
So
that.
again, 5 is you love it. 1 is don't bring that to Delafield.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to go through these, and then I control what's on your phone screen. So I'm going to ask you after about 15 seconds whether or not you're all done, and then I'm going to move on to the next one. So what else did I want to say? I feel like I wanted to say something else. Well, we're just going to go for it, folks.
They're just going to go 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm ready.
Image 1, go ahead and rank your image. Oh, I know, on your phones it should say the type of use. This is commercial office.
Yes,
That's what I
it says
wanted to say.
business office here.
So
Okay,
this, for
good.
me, it's just circling the number.
Just hit the circle. You
Circle.
got it? Oh yeah, circle the number. That's right, you're on paper. Everyone done?
Yep.
When I ask if anyone's not done yet, just raise your hand if you're not done, okay? And Dave, I'm gonna have to trust that you're keeping up with us.
I'm good.
Okay, hold on, I'm learning here too.
Gotta hit submit.
I'm trying to move to the next one. Okay. 2, rank image 2. Uh-oh, went back to 1.
What happened to 2?
What are you guys on? 2?
2.
I'm not. I hit submit.
Can you get 2 back
Hit
up?
submit.
Nothing.
No, I didn't vote
Skip
on that question. Why did
Yeah,
it say
yeah.
that?
Okay.
Presenter has changed the slide. Go to slide. Here we go.
I did change, I think it
Okay.
changed.
Here it
Yeah.
goes.
Okay, now it says wait for presenter.
Okay, anybody not done? All right. Hold on. This is an operator. I don't know what's changing. It's not. It kind of has like a delayed reaction.
Our website better work better than this.
I wonder if I can take it out.
For
of presenter.
$1,500.
Sorry, I know I'm taking up your time, but we did so good on the last exercise.
So is this part of the 28,000?
27.
Yeah,
I don't know
thank you.
why. I don't know. I was hitting a bunch of buttons.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Hey,
I did that.
He's in charge.
I did know that. Number 3.
anybody counting stories there?
All right, let's go to
All right, next.
number
Yep.
4. How many did we have total? Like 60? So we're going to
Yeah,
pick
we
up.
got it. We'll get moving here now that we're.
I'm done.
Okay.
Anyone?
All right, let's go to number 5. Okay.
Yep.
6. Okay. 7. Let's go to 8. Number 9.
That one's kind of hard to see.
10. Uh, 11. Let's go to 12. $13.
Dave, are you keeping up with us?
Yep.
Okay, good.
All right. 14. 15? $16. On to number 17. $18. All right. 19.
Now I think we're looking at mixed-use developments.
So do you want to describe that?
Mixed use, so this could be a combination of commercial, residential, multifamily, all within one, one planned development.
20? Third of the way there.
Woohoo.
All right. 21. $22. Moving on to 23.
That one's kind of hard.
And this mixed use, just so you know, some of those are residential and some of the buildings are commercial and some of the buildings are both.
24.
Covered our downtown plan.
25 is not mixed use. So what
Industrial,
are we on to?
we're on industrial.
Industrial now. 25 is industrial.
Mm.
26. $27. $28. $29. $30.
What is that?
31. $32. 33. How about 34?
Single-family residential. Steve's taking pictures.
36. $37.
What would you call this, Amy?
Residential, isn't it?
It's residential.
Is it like a?
It's meant to be
clustering?
single-family.
It's a picture.
Is it a clustering though? Where they cluster and
kinda
have
looks-
more open space?
Kind of looks like it.
Yeah.
Clustered in a farm field.
Okay.
38.
Tiny house.
Oh, God.
They're cute.
What size lot do
They got to come with that color.
You better like your spouse.
And
Reminds me of a fairy
Tiny
tale.
house, Villa Delafield.
39.
This is kind of hard to
Showing more of a
see.
pattern here.
What,
Yeah.
what is that? I can't
is
see.
that?
these are vacant lots, but it's just showing, an agricultural field cut up into those squares
Just
for
again,
development.
Initial thoughts on what that might look like. Same thing on 40, just kind of a development pattern.
Don't read the Confederate trench thing. It doesn't apply.
I don't see that one.
You know.
41. I want to know where that is.
Okay, so what is that?
Yeah, what is it?
So this is just single family, spread out in farm fields.
Multi-acre lots.
Looks flooded.
So everyone can hunt.
Rural lots,
42.
Single family.
cluster development.
Cluster development, okay.
43. 44. Again, still on single-family homes. 45.
Tim, is that your street?
All right, I think we're moving on to
Multifamily.
multifamily. 46 is starting multifamily. Which could be apartments, condos,
Yeah.
townhomes. 47. All right, let's move to 48. $49. $50. $51. Okay, 52. Let's go to 53. $54.
Do these show up crisp on your phone?
Yes.
Crisper on your phone? Okay, good.
55. Almost done. 56. I think the last few are hotels.
Are we moving on to hotels? Yes, so last few are hotels.
57.
I think I stayed in this one.
58. 59. 60. And the last one of the night, 61. Is that the
Good.
Is that the Iron Horse?
It is.
I know that one. I like that.
Look familiar.
So you guys gonna rapid tally these, or?
Yeah.
Well, so we thought,
They're all in there somewhere.
they're in there. I thought Darren would have immediate access to the results. I hid the results so that you guys wouldn't be influenced by each other while we were doing it, but we need to figure out how we can have
Yeah,
access.
I don't think that's going to happen.
You don't think so?
Not tonight.
Why don't you continue on and I can.
Save it?
I can.
Okay, so Darren will see if we can get you rapid results. That was kind of our goal, but if not, we'll share them post-meeting, top 5, bottom 5 of each. So other than that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for participating in this. I know, for one, just being willing to do it is awesome, and then also taking time from 7 until 9:30 at night is really, and we're really grateful for that as well. So we'll summarize the results here, and then I will start working with Tom and Ken to move forward on next steps for the development of that focus group meeting, and how we get that started as quickly as possible. And with your approval, the most important step that we need to do right now from SEH is get Dan working on the cost of services study, because we want that information available as part of the focus group. What I will do while Dan's working through that project is I will work on the community survey piece, the website development, and then we will try to schedule a focus group meeting to do a similar exercise as this. So we don't need to get, for that first meeting, get in the nitty-gritty details of land use because we're going to do something very similar to what we did tonight. Any questions from anyone?
Are you going to publish the results of this survey?
We will, of tonight?
Yeah.
We will definitely publish them. I am thinking, I probably won't publish them to like the dedicated website until after those other groups have an opportunity to do similar stuff. And then whatever gets published will probably just be merged. I mean, we don't need to intentionally separate bodies and groups, but it would be interesting for us,
I'm just
I think.
asking if someone asked under public information, if this is public information, it should be available.
Yes, it will be. It would be nice if we could get their answers organically without being influenced by yours. But if somebody asked, it's on YouTube, so our whole meeting, isn't it?
Yeah. the
Our whole
meeting is-
meeting's on YouTube.
So you're going to have people inquiring as to what the results are. And so I think
Yes.
there needs to be a timeline. If you want to hold them because it would be improved,
Yes,
I think you need to say when they can look at what we
Okay.
said.
and we'll talk about, I'll be here tomorrow, so we can talk about how we open that to the public.
Amy, when are you envisioning the first meeting as a focus group?
Middle of April.
Okay, just an FYI for the council, we're not scheduled to meet until April 19th, so we'll probably have to add a special meeting for the confirmation of that focus group.
And if you can't, I mean, we could amend the
Nope, we
time
can't.
to, okay.
No, we'll have a meeting. We'll get it done.
Sounds good. Well, I think that brings the meeting to a conclusion. Seeing no further business, thank you, Amy and Tom and our guests for putting on a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I do have some here.
Do you have it?
Well, I exported it to an Excel.